Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. So we did a video last week talking to Blinky about how to improve on Baptiste, but of course not everybody plays that hero, and there was still some really good bits of advice for improving on anyone and how to sort of play like a top 500, even if your mechanical skill isn't very good, or you're just in a lower rank, you can still play like a very good player. This also coincides with some really solid advice I heard from a Counter-Strike video actually that I wanted to include here, but it's all about how to just basically improve a lot better than you are at the moment. But to start off, this is some of Blinky's main advice on how to improve on any hero.
My advice across basically all heroes, Baptiste included, is the number one thing that people have problems with is determining or being aware of the team fight like status and how many people are alive and dead on both teams. So you're going to, the very frequent advice is, oh, you need to work on your positioning or you need to work on this or that. But all those things, if you think about it as like a decision tree, you can't get to proper positioning if you don't know whether it's 5 versus 3 or 3 versus 5. How aggressive you play, how passive you play, who's up and who's down. All those things it's just so important to know that, and you just cannot know what proper positioning looks like until you get to that point. So if you're learning Baptiste for the first time, you're not going to have the brain power to focus on that. Whenever I learn a new hero, I was learning Genji recently, and I would blade 2 versus 6. Not because I think it's a good idea to blade 2 versus 6, but because I would be so focused on learning my hero and my individual cooldowns and things that I just wouldn't be paying attention. So if it's playing a hero you're comfortable with, then I'd recommend learning that first. But if you're going to be learning Baptiste for the first time, or you have very limited experience on him, and you just want to focus on, sort of his own individual abilities, what I would recommend is trying to see what you can get away with in terms of not using your abilities. So not using your shift and not using your immortality. See how long you can go with healing your tank, and maybe they die. But if you always use both of those abilities just as soon as something gets like a little bit dangerous, then you'll never know like how long you really can go before you are forced into using them. Because then as soon as you press your immortality, then the enemy team runs away and you're like, well, I didn't even, was he gonna die? Was he not? I don't actually know. It's hard to get feedback unless you try to really, play that line of maybe he's gonna die, maybe not, and try to time it perfectly, and then screw it up a lot, and then learn from those screw-ups.
Like I said at the start of the video, playing mindfully, so deciding what you're doing, I'm going to put this ability here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that whilst you're playing, versus playing instinctively, just sort of let yourself do it, is a big area that I think a lot of people just assume that top 500 players are kind of like the hangover algebra meme when he's counting the cards, that they could just calculate everything that's going on, and that's not strictly the case. And this is the bit that I wanted to use from a video from Warowl, who makes a lot of Counter-Strike content, that I think really hits a nail on the head when it comes to Overwatch 2.
When you're in game, you're not gonna be able to think about these things. You're not gonna say, okay, I think I got a pre-shoot there. Warowl said maybe wide peek a little bit, I'll strafe a little bit left, maybe throw in a duck, whoo. No, there's no way. You learn these things beforehand, and then when you play, you just kinda do. You think it's like Pokemon, but it's actually like Dragon Quest monsters. Warowl, what the hell does that mean? So in Pokemon, you throw out the Pokemon and you have full control over it. You make the decisions for it. So you say, Pikachu, use Thunderbolt! And then Pikachu's gonna use Thunderbolt. He's always gonna use Thunderbolt. He's not just gonna be like, bitch, I know what I'm doing. In Dragon Quest monsters, you train them beforehand. So when the monster's out there fighting, it just kind of does its thing. It's like, maybe I'll heal this round. It's up to the monster. You're the monster, okay? You don't have full control. When you play the game, you're just going off of what you know. You're just going off of what you play. If you try to make every decision, like, all right, strafe, look at, shoot, duck, you're gonna slow yourself down a lot. It's just not gonna work. You're gonna tense up. With
that clip in mind, I did actually want to ask Blinky what he thought of the whole situation and get his input on that.
So I do think the overwhelming majority of it is going to be sort of like instinct based on what you've learned already and your experiences, and you're not going to consciously think about a lot of the things. And I think that's true of basically almost every hero. But what I will say is that in order to get there quickly, you do have, especially as support, a lot of downtime between team fights. And what I think the best use of your time is there is hit tab. Think about who has ult and who doesn't, on both on your team and the enemy team. Think about whether the enemy team switched heroes or not. Think about who's most likely to pressure you, if anybody at all, or pressure one of your teammates. And that way, you can start to predict things. And then you sort of have a little science experiment in front of you where you make a prediction of oh, yes, I hit tab. Now I remember, oh, they have a Doomfist and a Tracer and a Winston, for example. So they have 3 heroes who can dive me. So I'm going to try to save my abilities and use them very selfishly this fight. Or maybe you'll hit tab and you'll then now, again, it's conscious sort of between fights in this planning phase. Oh yeah, they have a really slow comp and they have McCree and May. So nobody's going to flank me, so I should really predict my front line to get walled off or flashbanged or otherwise need emergency healing or immortality. So I'm going to try to use my abilities on my tanks this fight. And use that, and between fights, you use that as sort of reflecting on what happened and why. And now that's very difficult to do if you're playing, by yourself, not streaming, not with any friends, because it's very easy to just autopilot and shrug it off, and it's easy to do that. So streaming helps me a lot. So I'd always recommend, if you want to do that level of analysis of thinking about what's going to happen or what you should be doing and why, then talking it through is similar to if you were to tutor somebody in school, you often will learn it even better yourself that way. So I would highly recommend people try streaming, even if it's to 0 viewers, just as if maybe one person pops in, or any other method that they enjoy, like playing with a teammate and then asking their opinion on situations, or like playing with a friend rather. Or, of course, doing things like game reviews, but realistically, I think most people don't enjoy reviewing their own games, so it's sort of, like you mentioned earlier in the call, it's a lot like a gym routine where you can spend all day focusing on what's the most optimal way to practice or get better or think about these things and start to build these habits up. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to do it, then there's no point. So most important is finding something that kind of works, but you enjoy doing and have fun with. And then you can start to build these sort of conscious ideas and predictions into routine and unconscious, and then, or subconscious, and don't have to think about them, and then can move on to the next topic consciously. And that's how at least I get better. So
you sort of mentioned before of constantly focusing on different areas and then moving on to other areas once you feel that you've improved. What are you working on at the moment? I think you are a very educational streamer and stuff like that. So what is important to you at the moment that you're trying to work on that maybe even people could consider, oh, I didn't realize that higher tier players even worried about this kind of stuff? So what are you working on?
Sure. So right now, it's not the best answer, but my aim really, because I am somebody that I certainly think I have above average aim, but for being, a 4,400 player, I have really below average aim for that skill rating. So I rely heavily on decision making to sort of carry me to higher skill ratings on even aim dependent heroes. Zen being my third hero that I hit top 500 on, and possibly my best hero ever, and people think he's so mechanically intensive, but so much of it actually is just decision making. And you'll also note that, like Shroud, for example, Shroud started playing Overwatch for a couple weeks or a few weeks or so, and he wasn't doing so hot, even though he was playing a lot of Ashe, and even though he had pretty good aim, it's just there's so much more to it. So anyways, the reason why is just because I feel that it's just a very easy area where I don't have to be Pine, I don't have to be Taimu, I don't have to be some sort of sicko hit scan player, but I think it's the lowest hanging fruits for me to improve on that would make me a drastically better player on heroes like Bap and Ana. And the way that I've been trying right now is to use various in-game aim training workshops. So Elo Hell is a great place where they have a forum that have workshop modes. I'm not sure if you know of any other resources for that, but I've just tried a few different ones and try to just cycle between them. And the reason I think it's so important to use things like those aim trainers is that, again, if you really look at the number of minutes you spend aiming per day, if you play whatever 2 games a day or 2 games a week or 10 games a day, anything else, if you look at the sheer number of hours of waiting in queue or you're dying and respawning or waiting for the gates to open, or your team is resetting or the enemy team is resetting, or like I mentioned, you have a lot of, even in the middle of a team fight, a lot of shots that are just pretty easy on heroes like Baptiste and Ana. You're shooting tanks that are huge targets close to you. It's not very difficult. So if you were to really think about the number of aim-intensive times in the game, it's just such a small amount that I think that having the higher density aim training is extremely important. And people always say, well, those aim trainers are not realistic, so it's not as useful. And obviously playing ranked is going to be the most realistic, but it's always going to be a balance of realism versus aim density. And with the introduction of workshop aim trainers, now you get real reload patterns. Now you get real Overwatch movements, both on your team and they have enemy Pharah bots and enemy McCree bots and these things. So you start to approach a lot more realism than you would if you were to use like a Kovacs aim trainer or aim hero or some sort of Counter-Strike based aim trainer or something.
Is the best way to sort of get better at Baptiste just to sort of play him and make mistakes and just probably lose a lot of games before you really sort of click with a hero? Or would you say there's other things that you should be doing, such as watching your streams as an example, or watching VODs back after you've played a game? Like, how would you prioritize different methods of learning, I guess?
Sure, yeah. So there's always going to be value in doing, side things to work on primary things. So people will ask me, like, should I go play Tracer so that I understand better how to play against Tracer? And like the answer is like yes and no. Like there's obviously value there, but if you're trying to get better at Baptiste, the best thing to do on average is to play Baptiste. Or watch Baptiste, but you obviously have to play some amount of time, whether that's 30% play or 90% play. There is a reasonable number in there, and you don't have to worry about the exact number because the most important training is the training that you enjoy. So find something that you're actually willing to do within some realm of reason. But I do think that if you're trying to learn for the first time any hero or any game, the best starting point would be to take, some sort of pro player, somebody that plays Baptiste really well, and not just watch for like an entertainment point of view, but watch and maybe even skip around just to the team fights and sort of make your own predictions at like how they're going to play or why they're going to use certain abilities and what they see, and sort of use that as a template, as a starting point. Don't just copy the playstyle because you're not going to fully understand all the reasons that go into it, but you use that as a really good starting point of what high-level BAP play looks like, and then that's when you can start going in and playing and making your own adjustments and sort of really learning the reasons why behind they're doing those things. But in terms of in the game and playing, which is the way that most people prefer to practice because it's more fun than most other options, I will really reiterate that find some way to sort of game review yourself while playing. Play to learn, don't play to play. So between team fights, right after you die, any time that you can get, think about, pose those questions to yourself. Did I really need to use my shift there? Or did I die because I didn't use Immortality Field on myself and I could have predicted it very easily? Or if Widow headshots you and you have Immortality Field up, like, okay, maybe I did deserve to die there, and there's no way I could have possibly reacted in time to use Immortality Field on myself, so it's fine. But that sort of self-commentary is extremely powerful in getting better, and will elevate the quality of your learning while just playing and doing nothing more by a lot. But that can be very awkward if you're just doing it by yourself without streaming. So again, if you have the hardware to do it and to support it, that is the thing that helped me most, is just start streaming. Don't need anything high quality, just some excuse to talk through your gameplay and your plan and think about why things work or didn't.
That's everything that I wanted to go over today. Bit of a hybrid video, but I still felt it was important. It's helped me out a ton, and I hope it helps you out too. Big shout out to Blinky. You can check all of his details in the description below, as well as Warowl. If you're into Counter-Strike stuff, you probably know about him already. He's amazing at some of the content that he makes, and obviously inspired this video. But thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.